Hello everyone, this is Rajarshi Palit and I welcome you to today's economics class. Today we are going to learn about the process of collection of data. Now collection of data is a very important part in statistics because without data, statistical inquiry cannot be complete. And one of the greatest example of collection of data is the process of census that takes place in India every 10 years. So today we are going to get into the details of what are the various types of data and how those can be collected by the investigators. Collection of data is the first step in all statistical inquiry. Whenever we want to make an inquiry, be it of economic importance or of statistical importance, we need data from where we can get our inference. So in order to collect data which is helpful for us, which gives us true information regarding the population, the following things have to be kept in mind by the investigator when he or she proceeds to collect data. The first is the purpose of the inquiry. It should be very clear in the mind of the investigator that what is the purpose of the inquiry and what sort of information is required to fulfill that inquiry. Next is the scope of the inquiry. Third, the methods of collection of data, how we are going to collect data. And the fourth one is types of inquiry, how are we going to inquire, what will be the various ways that we are going to engage in the process of collection of data, and finally the units of collection. Now sources of collection of data. Now generally we have two sources of collection of data, one is the internal source and the other one is the external source. Now internal source is the source within the organization or within the institution, but external source can be further divided into two parts. One is the primary source of data and the second one is secondary source of data. Now what is internal source? Now data that comes from within the organization is called internal data. This type of data is generated internally and is used for the internal purpose of the organization to make functioning better. This may be interdepartmental inquiry, it may be interdepartmental correspondence. There are various types of information that travel between various departments within an organization. So such data is called internal data and the source is internal. Banks internal data, data of Indian Railways, data of various ministries are the source of internal data for them. Next we come to external source of data. Information drawn from outside the organization are called external data, and external data can be categorized into two parts. One is the primary source and the other is the secondary. Now the primary data can be further collected in various ways. These are scheduled method. We can make a schedule and collect data by observing, then interviewing the respondents with help of questionnaires and sociometric methods. These are some of the methods with which we can collect information from the respondents so that we can complete our inquiry. Secondary data can be collected in various ways. The source of secondary data can be internal source, published source and commercial source. Now published source can be in the form of books and articles, general statistics that is issued by the government from time to time, industrial survey reports, annual accounts of various companies, research reports, etc. So these can be the external sources of data. Then commercial sources can be the panel research, scanner research, monitors, in-shop research and reports, that is the research and reports that are generated by the various organizations commercially. So these are the various sources of secondary data, or you can say the various types of secondary data and the sources from where we can get them. Now let us come to the methods of collecting primary data. What are the various methods of collecting primary data? Now before we get into the methods of collecting primary data, we must know that what is primary data first. Now primary data is the data which a person collects for his personal use. That means he is collecting information so that he can use it for its personal investigation, the investigation which he or she has started upon and needs information, and for that matter they are collecting data. So primary data is first hand data which is collected by the investigator for his or her personal use, and in doing so they can collect data directly by personal investigation, that is by interviewing the people who are concerned. They may go directly to them and ask them questions and get the information that they require. This method is useful only when the area of inquiry is limited. If you have a very large area of inquiry, then personal investigation becomes very difficult. So that is why direct personal investigation is useful only when you have a limited number of people to inquire about. If it becomes larger, if the area becomes bigger, then this method becomes very costly. Next is indirect oral investigation. In this method, the data is collected indirectly from a person who is connected to the person concerned. That means we come across situations where the respondent is not willing to give you a response, or people are not very serious about the investigation. Sometimes they may not be giving you the correct information. So in that case, we may seek the information indirectly from the person who knows the person concerned from which we were supposed to collect the information. Now in indirect oral investigation, what happens is the information that we get is from a person who is not directly supposed to give you the information, but he is related to the person concerned. So in this case, the accuracy of data is not as reliable as it is in the case of direct personal investigation. Next comes the questionnaire method. In this method, the investigator prepared a set of questions to collect the information from the respondents. We prepare a set of questions, and these set of questions can be sent to the respondents by mail, or it may be the enumerator who carries the questionnaire to the respondent and gets their response. Now mailing questionnaire is the most efficient and economic method of collecting information, because it saves a lot of time and it saves a lot of effort as well. Cost is also limited, but when you send enumerators, it becomes a bit costly. So it is very efficient method by for collecting information by the mailing method. Now let us come to the qualities of a good questionnaire. What are the qualities of a good questionnaire? Because when we send questionnaires to the respondents for getting their response, we have to be very careful that the response to each and every question is given by the respondent and they give correct response to the questions. So for that matter, we have to ensure that the questionnaire has some qualities so that we can expect the response that is given by the respondent is reliable. So the first quality a questionnaire must have is that the questions should be simple and direct. Then the number of questions should be limited. You should not ask a large number of questions which makes people impatient while they are responding to the questions. Next is descriptive questions should be avoided, because if you allow for descriptions to be given by the respondent, then subjectivity creeps into the survey and we may not be getting the right information which we are expecting. Then personal questions should be avoided. Then questions related to the investigation should be asked. We should not ask irrelevant questions to the respondents. Then mathematical calculation should be avoided. Next, clear-cut instruction should be given to the respondents regarding the purpose of the questionnaire and the ways to fill the questionnaire. It should be very clearly mentioned to the respondents that what is the purpose, why this response is being sought from them, and what is the way in which they have to complete the questionnaire. And finally, the most important thing that every questionnaire should have is that they should have a covering letter. A covering letter will make it amply clear to the respondents that why they have been asked to supply the information and what is the purpose for which this information is sought from them. Now let us come to the merits of primary data. The merits of primary data is that targeted issues can be adjusted, can be addressed, data interpretation is better, high accuracy of data, then addressing specific research issues and greater control. Demerits are it becomes very costly, very time consuming, more personal resources are required, inaccurate feedback at times, and training and skill, and very laborious in nature. Collecting primary data becomes very laborious in nature if you have a large number of people to address. Next, let us come to the collection of secondary data. Now, secondary data can be collected from published sources and it can be collected from unpublished source as well. Published sources are international publications, government publications, semi-government publications, research papers prepared by researchers, journals and newspapers, and finally private publications. These are the sources from where we can get secondary data. From the sources it becomes clear that secondary data is not collected by the person, but it is already available in public domain and we collect the information from the sources that are mentioned here. So, primary data is the data which is collected by the investigator himself, but secondary data is not collected by the investigator, but it is already available and they use it as per their requirement. Now, here are some questions for your assessment which will make you understand whether you have learned things properly. First is, what do you mean by primary data? Then what are the external sources of data? Then what is a questionnaire? What are the qualities of a good questionnaire? And finally, distinguish between primary data and secondary data. So, I hope this presentation was useful to you. I have tried to present things easily so that it becomes very easily understandable for all of you and is helpful for your preparation for your exams. Thank you.